Farewell to Manzanar by Jean and James Houston. Pages 167 through 169. Chapter 22, 10,000 Voices. As I came to understand what Manzanar had meant, it gradually filled me with the shame for being a person guilty of something enormous enough to deserve that kind of treatment. In order to please my accusers, I tried, for the first few years after our release, to become someone acceptable. I both succeeded and failed. By the age of 17, I knew that making it, in the terms I had tried to adopt, was not only unlikely, but false and empty. No more authentic for me than trying to emulate my grand-aunt Toyo. I needed some grounding of my own, such as Woody had found when he went to commune with her and with our ancestors in Keiki. It took me another 20 years to accumulate the confidence to deal with what the equivalent experience would have to be for me. It's outside the scope of this book to recount all that happened in the interim. Suffice to say, I was the first member of our family to finish college and the first to marry out of my race. As my husband and I began to raise our family, and as I sought for ways to live agreeably in Anglo-American society, my memories of Manzanar for many years lived far below the surface. When we finally started talking about making a trip to visit the ruins of the camp, something would inevitably get in the way of our plans. Mainly my own doubts, my fears. I half suspected the place did not exist. So few people I met in those years had even heard of it, and those who had knew so little about it. Sometimes I imagined I had made the whole thing up, dreamed it. Even among my brothers and sisters, we seldom discussed the internment. If we spoke of it at all, we joked. When I think of how that secret lived in all our lives, I remember the way Keo and I responded to a little incident soon after we got out of camp. We were sitting on a bus stop bench in Long Beach when an old embittered woman stopped and said, "Why don't all you dirty Japs go back to Japan?" She spit at us and passed on. We said nothing at the time. After she stalked off down the sidewalk, we did not look at each other. We sat there for maybe 15 minutes with downcast eyes and finally got up and walked home. We couldn't bear to mention it to anyone in the family, and over the years we never spoke of this insult. It stayed alive in our separate memories, but it was too painful to call out in the open. In 1966, I met a Caucasian woman who had worked for 1 year as a photographer at Manzanar. I could scarcely speak to her. I desperately wanted to, but all my questions stuck in my throat. This time, it was not the pain of memory. It was simply her validation that all those things had taken place. Someone outside the close community of Japanese Americans had actually seen the camp, with its multitude of people and its swarm of buildings on the plain between the mountains. Something inside me opened then. I began to talk about it more and more. It was April 1972, 30 years almost to the day that we piled our 3 kids into the car and headed out there. From where we live now, in the California coast town of Santa Cruz, it's a full day's drive. We started down 101 to Paso Robles, crossed over the hummocky Diablo Range to the Central Valley, skirted Bakersfield, and climbed through the Tehachapi Pass into the desert. At Mojave, we turned north onto the same road our bus had taken out from Los Angeles in April 1942. It is the back road to the Sierras and the main route from Southern California to Reno and Lake Tahoe. We joined bikers and backpackers and the skiers heading for Mammoth. The traffic through there is fast, everyone but the bikers making for the high country. As we sped along wide roads at 60 and 70 with our kids exclaiming at the sights we passed and our car loaded down with camping gear, it seemed even more incredible to me that a place like Manzanar could have been anywhere within reach of such a highway, such a caravan of pleasure-seeking travelers.